The grand halls of Blackwood Manor had never felt colder to Clara Blackwood than they did that evening. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the enormous dining room, their golden light falling across the polished table and the silver dishes arranged for dinner. Outside, a gentle autumn rain tapped against the tall windows, turning the gardens into a blur of dark green and silver. Clara sat quietly at one end of the table. Across from her sat her husband, Duke Adrian Blackwood. For anyone watching them, they looked like the perfect aristocratic couple. He was 32, handsome, proud, and impeccably dressed in a black evening coat. His dark brown hair was neatly styled, and his sharp blue eyes carried the confidence expected of a duke. Clara was 26, elegant and graceful, wearing a deep emerald Victorian gown. Her long brown hair was pinned neatly behind her shoulders, leaving a few soft strands around her face. They looked perfect, but there was no warmth between them. They had been married for 2 years, and Adrian had never once told her that he loved her. Their marriage had been arranged after a difficult period for both families. Adrian had wanted to marry Lady Victoria Ashbourne, the woman he had loved since his youth, but his father had insisted that Adrian honor an old family agreement. Adrian had obeyed, but he had never forgiven Clara for it, even though Clara had never asked to replace Victoria. Even though Clara had never wanted Adrian to sacrifice his happiness. Even though she had entered the marriage believing that perhaps, with time, they might learn to care for one another, she had been wrong. Adrian had spent 2 years treating her like an unwanted obligation. That evening, however, something happened that Clara had not expected. The butler entered the dining room with a letter. "Your Grace, this arrived from London." Adrian opened it casually. His eyes moved across the page, then stopped. For the first time that evening, emotion appeared on his face. Clara noticed. "What is it?" she asked softly. Adrian folded the letter. "Lady Victoria has returned to England." Clara's fingers tightened around her napkin. She had heard the name before, many times. Victoria had been Adrian's first love, the woman he had wanted before Clara ever entered his life. "I see," Clara whispered. Adrian looked at her. "What?" "Nothing." But something had changed in the room. Adrian's thoughts were no longer at dinner. They were somewhere else, with someone else. Later that night, Clara found Adrian standing alone beside the library window. Rain streaked the glass behind him. "Adrian," he did not turn. "Yes." "Is she the reason you've been unhappy all these years?" He finally looked at her. "Who?" "Lady Victoria." His jaw tightened. "You already know the answer." Clara lowered her eyes. "I only wanted to hear it from you." Adrian walked toward the fireplace. "You want honesty?" "Yes." He stared into flames for several seconds. Then the words came. "This marriage ruined my life." Clara froze. Adrian continued. "I had a future before this marriage. I had someone I loved. I had a life I wanted." His voice became colder. "And now I have none of it." Clara felt as though someone had quietly taken the air from the room. "Adrian, I cannot leave you," he said. "My father would disown me. The family would lose everything. Society would destroy us. There are obligations I cannot simply walk away from." He looked directly at her. "But don't mistake that for love." Clara's eyes filled with tears. Adrian's next words hurt even more. "I can't leave you, but I'll never love you again." Silence filled the library. Clara stood there for several seconds. Then she nodded. "All right." Adrian seemed surprised. "That is all you're going to say?" Clara wiped the corner of her eye. "What would you like me to say?" "I don't know. You've made your feelings clear." She turned toward the door. "Clara." She stopped for a moment. Adrian thought she might turn around and plead with him. Instead, she said quietly, "You don't have to love me, Adrian, but please don't blame me for a decision I never made." Then she walked away. That night, Clara cried alone in her bedroom, not because she had lost Adrian's love. She had never truly possessed it. She cried because, for 2 years, she had secretly hoped that one day he might see her as more than the woman he had been forced to marry. That hope finally disappeared. The next morning, Clara changed. Not dramatically, not angrily. She simply stopped trying. She stopped waiting for Adrian at dinner. She stopped asking whether he would return home. She stopped sending notes to his study. She stopped preparing little surprises for him. She stopped trying to make him happy. At first, Adrian noticed nothing. He was too distracted by Victoria's return. Within weeks, Victoria began appearing at London's most fashionable gatherings. Adrian attended many of them. The whispers started almost immediately. The Duke and Lady Victoria may reunite. Perhaps his marriage was only temporary in spirit. Everyone knew Victoria was his true love. Clara heard every rumor. She simply remained silent. One afternoon, Adrian returned to Blackwood Manor and found Clara sitting in the drawing room. She was reading a book. He looked at her. "You didn't attend the luncheon today." "No." "Why?" "I wasn't invited." "You were." Clara closed her book. "Then perhaps I didn't want to go." Adrian stared at her. Once, Clara would have immediately apologized. Now she simply looked at him calmly. "Are you seeing Victoria again?" "Yes." "I hope you're happy." Something about her answer disturbed him. He had expected jealousy. Instead, there was nothing. "You don't care." Clara smiled faintly. "Would it change anything if I did?" Adrian had no answer. Days passed, then weeks. Clara became increasingly independent. She began spending time in the estate gardens. She visited nearby villages. She worked with the household staff and began restoring several neglected areas of the estate. Adrian watched from a distance. The woman who had once revolved around his life seemed to have created a life of her own. Then Adrian discovered something that changed everything. One morning, his estate manager entered his study. "Your Grace, I need to speak with you about the old accounts." Adrian looked up. "What about them?" "There are several payments that were made 2 years ago." "By whom?" The manager hesitated. "Lady Clara." Adrian frowned. Why would Clara pay estate debts? The manager looked uncomfortable. Because the estate was close to losing several properties. Adrian stood. "What?" "The financial situation was worse than your father told you." The manager explained that Clara had used part of her inheritance to settle several urgent debts after their marriage. Adrian could hardly believe it. "Why was I never told?" "I believe Lady Clara asked everyone to keep it private." Adrian's face changed. He remembered all the times he had accused Clara of entering his family for money. All the times he had treated her like an unwanted burden, and she had quietly used her own money to protect the very estate he believed she had damaged. That evening, Adrian found Clara in the library. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked up. "Tell you what?" "About the money." Clara's expression became distant. "It doesn't matter now." "It matters to me." "It shouldn't." Adrian stepped closer. "Why did you do it?" "Because the estate was in trouble." "You could have told me." "You wouldn't have listened." He had no response. "Because she was right." For 2 years, Adrian had convinced himself that Clara was responsible for his unhappiness. Now, he was beginning to realize that he had never actually tried to know her. A few days later, Clara made a decision. She would leave Blackwood Manor. She couldn't divorce Adrian easily, but she could move away. She arranged for a small countryside property belonging to her mother's family to be prepared. She packed quietly. One evening, Adrian returned home and saw several trunks near the staircase. His heart unexpectedly tightened. "What are those?" "My things." "Why?" "I am leaving." Adrian stared at her. "You can't." Clara looked at him calmly. "You told me you couldn't leave me." "Yes." "But you never said I couldn't leave you." His expression changed. "You're my wife, and you're the man who told me he would never love me." Adrian stepped forward. "I didn't mean." "You did." Her voice was gentle but firm. "And I believed you." For the first time, Adrian felt something dangerously close to fear. Not fear of scandal. Not fear of his father's anger. Fear of losing Clara. "You don't have to leave," he said. Clara looked at him. "Why?" He opened his mouth. No answer came, because the truth frightened him. He didn't know why her absence suddenly felt unbearable. Clara gave him a sad smile. "Exactly." The following morning, she left. There was no dramatic farewell, no angry argument. No accusation. She simply stepped into the carriage and disappeared down the long driveway. Adrian stood at the entrance of Blackwood Manor long after the carriage was gone. He told himself that this was what he wanted. Freedom. But the house felt different. Empty. Cold. Quiet. He spent more time with Victoria afterward. But something was missing. Victoria was charming, beautiful, sophisticated. Yet Adrian gradually realized that their memories belonged to the past. She knew the young man he had been. Clara had quietly learned the man he had become. One evening, Adrian found himself remembering small things. Clara leaving tea outside his study when he worked late. Clara remembering which books he liked. Clara asking the servants to keep the library warm because she knew he hated cold rooms. Clara standing beside him during family gatherings, even when he barely acknowledged her. He had mistaken her silence for weakness. Now he understood it had been patience. Then his father finally told him the truth. Your wife saved his family. Adrian looked at him. What? Your marriage was never the reason you lost your freedom, Adrian. His father explained that the family agreement had been created years earlier to protect the estate. But Clara was never your enemy, his father said. You made her one. Those words haunted Adrian. The next morning, Adrian traveled to Clara's countryside home. He found her walking through a garden filled with autumn roses. She saw him. Her expression remained calm. Why are you here? I came to apologize. Clara looked away. For what? For everything. He stepped closer. I blamed you for a life you didn't destroy. She remained silent. I thought I hated this marriage because I had lost Victoria. He took a breath. But the truth is, I hated myself for allowing my father to make decisions for me. And instead of facing that, I blamed you. Clara's eyes softened slightly. Adrian continued. You never deserved the things I said. No, Clara whispered. I didn't. I know. He looked down. I also know that saying I'm sorry doesn't repair 2 years. Clara studied him. What do you want from me? Adrian answered immediately. Nothing. She seemed surprised. I don't want you to return because you're my wife. I don't want you to forgive me because society expects it. He looked into her eyes. I want you to have a choice. Clara's eyes filled with tears. And if I choose not to return, I'll respect it. It was the first time Adrian had given her something he had never given her before. Freedom. He returned to London without asking her to come home. Weeks passed. He wrote letters. Not demanding letters. Not romantic promises. Just honest ones. He told her about his mistakes, his fears, his regrets. And slowly, Clara began replying. 1 letter became 2. 2 became many. Eventually, Adrian visited again. They walked through the garden together. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, Clara said, You once told me this marriage ruined your life. Adrian lowered his eyes. I remember. Do you still believe that? He looked at her. No. Why? Because I finally understand that you were never the thing ruining my life. He smiled sadly. Clara looked away. Adrian continued. I don't know if I deserve another chance. You probably don't. He laughed softly. That sounds fair. But perhaps, Clara said, people can change. Adrian looked at her hopefully. Perhaps. They did not immediately return to Blackwood Manor. Instead, they began again slowly. They met without servants. They talked. They learned about each other's childhoods. They discovered things they had never known despite being married for 2 years. And for the first time, Adrian saw Clara not as the wife his father had chosen for him. He saw her as the woman who had chosen, despite everything, to remain kind. Months later, Clara finally returned to Blackwood Manor. Not because she was forced, not because Adrian demanded it, because she wanted to. As they stood together beneath the chandelier, where they had once sat like strangers, Adrian took her hand. I once said I could never love you. Clara smiled faintly. You did. I was wrong. She looked at him. Adrian's voice softened. I don't want you to be the wife I am obligated to keep. He squeezed her hand gently. I want you to be the woman I am grateful I was given a chance to know. Clara's eyes filled with tears. And if I don't forgive you completely, then I'll spend the rest of my life earning it." She smiled. For the first time, there was no sadness in it, only hope. Their marriage had begun as an obligation. It had survived resentment. It had nearly ended in silence. But now, for the first time, it belonged to them. And Adrian finally understood the truth he had been too proud to see. Sometimes we blame another person for the life we never had the courage to choose. And sometimes, when pride finally disappears, we discover that the person standing beside us was never our prison. They were the person waiting for us to finally open the door.